Be ready. It might be chilly.
Welcome back to the Bills Bunker. As always, I'm Jake Varcoe, and today I have a very special guest joining me on the show, a 7-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro, Buffalo Bills Wall of Fame member, and host of One Bills Live, Steve Tasker. How are you doing, Steve?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Obviously, you're a pretty popular guy in Buffalo, and if you go on Twitter, there's an account named Put Steve Tasker in the Hall of Fame. What does it mean to you?
That's not my account. I don't have anything to add.
Not a burner account from Steve Tasker. So what
It's
does
not.
it mean? What does it mean for you to see stuff like that and have an entire fan base behind you, rooting you on?
Well, it's nice. I mean, that's what fans do. They root on guys that played for their teams, and I'm appreciative that there's a lot of people that still remember me and have fond feelings toward my career. I was part of a great team with a great bunch of guys. I felt lucky to be a part of it, and I'm appreciative of it. That's all I can say. It's very nice and gratifying, and I appreciate it and flattered by it.
So, unfortunately, didn't get into the Hall of Fame this year. So, looking forward, what would it mean for you to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
Well, I think it'd be great. I don't know. The guys that I know and my friends that have gotten in think it's pretty cool. And I always tell my, like, Thurman Thomas and Bruce Smith and Jim Kelly and Andre Reed and James Lofton, even Marv Levy. I joke around, say, it's probably a good thing I'm not in because it might ruin my life, right? I like where I'm at right now. I don't lose sleep over not being in the Hall of Fame. I'm gratified by being in the conversation, no question. But I told him I'd be really mad if I got in the Hall of Fame and all of a sudden my life, changed my life all that much, because I kind of like my life the way it is.
Okay, so
that's obviously I'm teasing about that, but yes, that's kind of the truth.
Certainly. I mean, it would definitely be a great honor to get inducted into the Hall of Fame. You're widely regarded as one of the greatest special teams players of all time, if not the greatest special teams player of all time. So looking at the position, there's not too many players that do get into the Hall of Fame. What makes you feel as if you're deserving of getting the honor?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, I don't get to decide whether I deserve to be in the Hall of Fame or not. I don't have a vote. I know I was on a really good team, made a difference for a really good football team, did it for a long period of time. And I felt like I played in an era where special teams were really a much bigger part of the outcomes of football games than they're able to be today because of player safety and because of rule changes. It's much more difficult to make a difference making a superlative play rather than having one team or the other make a significant mistake that leads to a change in possession or something like that. So I felt like I was still part of the special teams world when great plays could be made at a more regular level than now, where it's not a great play, it's a big mistake by one of the other teams. So I think that's a different kind of perspective now with special teams that we didn't have when I was playing. The rosters were big enough to allow for guys who didn't play regular down and distance. They'd be standing on the sidelines otherwise. So to maximize the roster, head coaches and coaching staffs put special teams players on their roster because they knew they could make a difference in those areas of the game. And to maximize their rosters, the game expanded and allowed guys like me to contribute to really good teams. And there have been a number of guys over the years who have done that. So if you're asking about guys who have contributed to really good football teams and made a difference for other teams as well, special teams guys have to be in the mix, particularly the crew I played on. So it was fun to be a part of it, and certainly we did some special things for a team that was pretty special in and of itself.
And special teams are so important to the game of football. It's 1/3 of the game, and it's a pretty big part of the game. Like it's something that sometimes goes unnoticed, but when there's a mistake, like you mentioned, it's definitely noticed. So you're mentioning about that expansion that you see, that there was expanded roster back then. Um, did you always envision yourself playing in the NFL, or at what point did you believe that that was going to be a possibility?
It was going to be a possibility when I got drafted in the ninth round at 226 overall. That's when I thought maybe it'd be a possibility. And I didn't really think I would be able to. I never really thought I'd make a team. I mean, I walked out and I was on the Houston Oilers, and there were three Hall of Famers in the room. And of course, nobody knows it then when you walk in there. But Bruce Matthews, Mike Munchak, and Warren Moon were all in that room, along with some other really truly great players that were in that room. All three of those guys in the Hall of Fame, and I walked in and as a NFL rookie, and they drafted three players at my position in that same draft. So, it was just a little steep hill to climb. But I didn't really believe I would ever be an NFL player until I actually got a phone call that said, I had made the team, and that's where it began.
Now, you played on some great teams with the Buffalo Bills and dating back to the Houston Oilers days as well. In a long career, you're part of some amazing teams, including a team that went to 4 straight Super Bowls. When you look at this current Bills team, what similarities do you see between the two teams?
They start with really good players at the top. I mean, Josh Allen, Steph Diggs, Matt Milano, these guys. Von Miller is a part of this team. They've got some Tre'Davious White, the safeties Poyer and Hyde. They got a ton of really talented and high end players. That's first and foremost. And I think the thing that sets good teams apart is that the best players like Josh Allen and Steph Diggs of the world, the Von Millers of the world, here in Buffalo, just like the Bruce Smith and Andre Reed and Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas players, that Cornelius Bennett, the Darryl Tallies, the best players are the hardest working players. And that dynamic raises the level of the other players on the roster. When the best players work the hardest and are the most committed to success, other players follow that lead because there's, everybody else on the roster sees themselves as expendable. And you almost ask to be off the team if you're not going to at least match the work ethic of the most talented players, because that's one thing you can decide to do. You can't be as tall or as heavy or as fast, maybe, as some other guys, but you can work as hard, at least, right? So having great players who are really hardworking elevates those teams to be greater than the sum of the parts.
And what was it about those teams that you played on that made them so special?
Well, like I said, great players, first of all, great players, great coaches, and also a sense in those locker rooms with a culture of a group of guys that were playing for something bigger than themselves, playing for each other, playing for a city, playing for the extended family of that team, our relatives, our friends, our my brothers and sisters, of teammates of mine that I was friends with, playing and having them be invested in the team. The people in the building, from the stadium guard to the secretaries, a sense of everybody being in it together and us having a responsibility to do our part so that we could all win. I think special teams are always like that. And certainly that team in Buffalo that I played on in the 90s that went to the Super Bowls was one of those special teams.
What do you think was the biggest challenge of getting back to those Super Bowls on a yearly basis?
Obviously, staying healthy as we could. You knew that there were a lot of moments in there where it never would have happened. If you lose the wrong game along the way, you never go. You never get a chance to go back to the Super Bowl. I think having a coach in Marv Levy who set a standard that set us up to be successful and have a standard of excellence, not just as good as but a standard of excellence, being with an appetite to get better, and an appetite to continue to grow as a team and to incorporate new players every year, was certainly important to those teams. So I think that the most difficult part of the whole thing was probably the longer that run went, the more difficult it was to maintain that level of excellence as, with all the bumps and bruises and the mileage that you put on yourself through a 4 years of stretch. Plus we were all veterans when that run began. So we all got old during that run, and it was hard to match the exuberance we had when it began.
And when you're maintaining that level of excellence, consistently getting to the Super Bowl, what's the outside pressure like? How do you block that out?
Well, you learn that it's the pressure that you put on yourself that is more difficult to deal with. That's what affects you. The outside pressure is easy to shrug off because there are a lot of people who speak about the game who don't know anything about the game, or who don't have any sense of the culture inside the locker room or the dynamics that go on there in a group setting or a team setting. So they speak from a place where it's easy to see through their deficiencies and their opinions. So you don't really have to listen to it because it's ridiculous, a lot of it, and that helps. And so the conversations inside the building and inside the locker room are the ones that are the most inspiring and the most motivating, the most empowering, and the ones that are really important. And when those conversations get to a place where they're very healthy and supportive and empowering, then that's where the pressure comes from, from the desire to do your part for a greater cause. And when you see great players doing that and going the extra mile and doing the things that they didn't need to do, and it raises the level of all the guys on the roster.
So inside the locker room, you say that there's some guys that will kind of like step up and motivate inside that team dynamic. Who would you say was the biggest catalyst as a motivator for those teams?
There was a lot of guys there was like Thurman Thomas and Jim Kelly. There were lesser known guys like Daryl Talley, who was a real voice of emotion in that locker room. Cornelius Bennett was truly a great player. Guys like that were, difference makers. James Lofton had a great demeanor in the locker room. He wasn't a fiery leader, but he was a credible voice of wisdom who had a lot of respect in our locker room. When he spoke, people listened. So there were a lot of guys like that, and it wasn't just one man, who was our heart and soul, or who was, the guy the voice of the Bills. It was all of them, and the way we reacted to those guys. And so that that's kind of the answer to it. It was a shared burden, and whoever felt the need to speak up and be a voice of emotion and speak to the team in that way, a lot of guys would step up to that. But there were, like the voices I mentioned, are consistent guys who had played that role. Daryl Talley, Kent Hull, guys like that, along with guys like Leonard Smith at times, and of course, even Bruce and Jim and Thurman were big voices in that.
A lot of big voices there. A lot of really great, talented players on those teams.
Yeah.
After your playing career, how did you find the transition from playing football to the broadcast booth and hosting a show about the Bills?
I started working towards broadcasting during my career, and was working in television for the last 4, 5, 6 years of my career in Buffalo, kind of preparing the way. And it worked out well on in the transition that, I had made it known to whoever I could that I wanted to pursue this career after I was done. And things worked out that I got an opportunity to screen test for CBS just after I retired, and they offered me a position, and I was there for 21 years. So that's how it happened for me. I prepared for it, started preparing for it 6 or 7, 8 years before I actually needed to make a living doing it. So it was a long time coming.
That's awesome. What would you say, on or off the field, is your biggest accomplishment?
Wow. I don't know. I got a pretty good family. I got my wife and I have been married 37 years, 5 children, 8 grandchildren. all doing well. All five children married and grown and off my payroll for sure, doing really well. They're thriving, and I think that's probably um, as I don't know, as big a deal as I can think of. It was a 37-year project, so yeah, we've been working on it a long time, and we still work on our family every day. So it's one of those things that's probably the one that I point to that's the most important to me.
And I haven't gotten to that point in my life yet where I get to have my own family, but I will say I got the opportunity to work with Luke in the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and so like what I took away from working alongside Luke, his knowledge of the game is crazy. I learned so much about the game. It was awesome to work around him.
Yeah, he's on his way up there today. They got a game tonight.
Yeah, playing a game tonight. So check out the Ticats Audio Network. Give it
That's
a
right.
listen. Um, Someone else that you work closely with is Josh Allen in some commercials and covering the team. What makes him so likable, and what's he like to be around?
Well, he's a great guy, and he's genuine. I mean, that's the thing. He is who he is. He doesn't have any alter ego or anything like that. He's the same guy all the time. Certainly, he's under different pressures than most of us are as a superstar athlete, and it's difficult for him to go get gas, in his car without getting stopped. He certainly can't shop for groceries, so he's in a different world because of his notoriety at the current moment than most of us are. Uh, but he's a genuine guy who loves his friends, has a great family, and he's loyal and smart, and he's a very smart dude. So he's got a great sense of self awareness. He handles himself extremely well in every situation I've been around him. He's wise beyond his years. He's like I say, he's articulate and intelligent, and he deserves the good things that have come to him. He's worked hard for them. He's gifted, and he's stewarded those gifts extremely well to be in this position.
He's certainly the face of the franchise, and he's a special player. You talk a lot about the Buffalo Bills. I want to go back to talking about you for a moment here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show a video of one of your famous plays, and I'd like to get your reaction of it.
Yeah, this is Sunday Night Football on ESPN, and we were actually talking about this play today. I came off the edge. I got a jump on the snap. The snapper had quick snapped the last punt, and I didn't get a good enough jump. So I was ready very early on this one and got a good jump off of the bottom right there and ran right through where the end man on the line of scrimmage was lined up. Jeff Goss, the punter for the Raiders, is a really good dude, and he got that punt off extremely fast. And they did it consistently, so we didn't know if we were ever going to get a chance to block one. But like everything worked perfectly. John Hagee on the inside of me did exactly what he was supposed to do and pulled the guy down. So he stepped away from me, and I got a chance to take the right angle. And Jeff, because of the call of the punt, was trying to punt it down the middle and stepped forward instead of away from me. So it gave me an extra foot to get to the punt, and was able to get a hand on it. And that punt, we went from trailing in that game to leading because of the touchdown, and ended up winning by double digits in a game that we had been getting pushed around early. And so it certainly turned the tide of that game. And that was one of the moments when, yeah, that stadium was really rocking after we scored that touchdown. So it was a fun play. It was one that worked out perfectly, just like we had planned it. And yeah, I that's one of my favorite plays.
And for the viewers that don't know, the score in that game going into the fourth quarter, I believe it was 24-14 for the Raiders. That game was on October 7th, 1990, and the Bills come back with a massive comeback. That touchdown had a big part in propelling them to victory.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. Fun.
A segment that you have on One Bills Live is Tasker's teammate. So something I'd like to do, I'd like to quiz you on your own career here for a quick second here.
Okay. I hope I pass.
How many touchdowns did you finish with in your NFL career, including playoffs?
10 or 11. 10, 11,
It was 10. Correct.
10. All right.
Okay. Can you name every quarterback that you caught a touchdown from?
I think so. Frank Reich, Jim Kelly, Todd Collins, Gail Gilbert.
You got it. All four. Over or under 760 receiving yards for your career?
760?
Over or under?
I'd say under.
It was over with 779.
Okay.
Got pat yourself on the back there.
Yeah.
How many playoff games did you play in?
17?
19.
19.
Pretty close.
Okay.
Pretty close.
All
Pretty
right.
good. Steve, thank you so much for joining the show today.
I appreciate
it.
No, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you having me, and thanks for the opportunity. It's nice to meet you.
You as well. And thank you everyone for watching the Bills Bunker. Stay tuned for more stuff coming your way. I'll be previewing Giants Bills tomorrow right here on the channel. Thank you for watching.